Hey everyone, Dr. Brian Schwabe here with your athletic prescription of the week. Today we're going to talk about ankle mobility restrictions and how to actually program around your own individual restrictions. So if you guys have not watched these athletic prescriptions of the week before, my name is Dr. Brian Schwabe. I'm a board certified sports physical therapist, author, strength coach, and the founder of BrianSchwabeDPT.com. So my mission is to empower you to understand how to improve your own athleticism, maintain your fitness, and work around your injuries or mobility restrictions. So today we're going to talk again about ankle restrictions and specifically a few tests to determine where your ankle restrictions might be coming from so you can again program individually instead of just guessing. So let's talk about where you could be having your ankle restrictions first. So if we think about the ankle, a lot of times we're either going to get stiffness in the back of the ankle or the front of the ankle. If it's the front of the ankle, then it's the front joint of the ankle, which means the talocrural joint. Now I'm going to show you a specific test for that shortly. Now the other area that it could be the soft tissue, which means your calf. But what we have to remember with the calf is there's two different muscles in the calf. There's the gastroc and the soleus. The gastroc is going to work when your leg is straight, and the soleus is going to work when your leg is bent. And that's going to be a very important distinction to understand for some of our functional movements like the squat, when your knee is bent, or some type of other pushing off motion when your leg is probably straight. So let's dive into the mobility test that you can perform really quickly. It takes just a couple minutes. You don't need any equipment. And then from there, we'll talk about how to address those mobility restrictions so you know how to individually program your own ankle mobility. So I'm going to move this out of the way. We're going to go through those next. Okay, so for this first test, what we're going to do is called a half-kneeling ankle dorsiflexion test. Now, the importance of this test is it's going to start us off by telling us how well our dorsiflexion is. And the reason why dorsiflexion is so important is because that's usually where you're restricted the most. So dorsiflexion is basically just the act of your ankle or your knee going over your ankle so that I make this flexion moment, okay? So if I'm laying down, what you're going to see a lot of times is I'm just going to be able to flex my ankle up. But really functionally, this is the test that we need, okay? So what you're going to do here is have a wall, a foam roller, anything that's easy. Put your feet up against the foam roller wall first. The key here is keep your ankle down, so your heel's flat, your big toe is flat, and your little toe is flat. From here, you're going to rock your knee forward and hopefully touch the foam roller wall without any of those areas popping off the ground. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to bring our toes about 4 inches from the foam roller wall, and we're going to repeat the test. Okay? Now, this would be considered normal because I can reach that wall or that foam roller in a straight line without any type of deviation or with my ankle popping off the table or off the floor. So what you're going to see a lot of times if you're restricted is you're not even close to getting there. Okay? What happens is most people, especially basketball players, do not have that ankle mobility, okay? And this just tells us the first piece of the puzzle. It's something we can measure later. So the way I often tell people to do it is, okay, if you can't do it 4 inches from the wall, move up an inch, repeat the test. Can you hit it? If not, move up another inch, and then repeat it. And keep moving up or back until you no longer can get there. Or you can get there. So if you can get there from 2 inches, you know that's your starting point. As you work on your ankle mobility restrictions, and a couple weeks later, test it out an inch back. That way you know you're making progress, okay? But again, what is considered normal is 4 inches from the wall or foam roller, being able to hit your knee there without your arch collapsing in or your heel popping off the ground. So that's the first test. That's the half-kneeling ankle dorsiflexion test. By the way, if you guys like these half-kneeling dorsiflexion tests and you're really curious about where your orthopedic restrictions are, check out my newsletter and my free guide to actually improving your 10 orthopedic tests that you can do for your own self-discovery. It's really good. It's going to help you just like this to discover what you actually need. Now, the next test we're going to go through is going to be a standing test because all this tells us is that we're basically restricted in our ankle. But now we have to determine, is there any soft tissue involvement? Okay, so the key with this, and I'm going to be standing here, you need to find some type of just small elevated surface. And the reason why is because what we're going to do here is we're going to be dropping our heel down into dorsiflexion. And what we're going to be determining is it calf, meaning soft tissue, or is it the front of our ankle, meaning talocrural joint? Calf or talocrural joint. So I'm going to stand here, single leg, drop my heel down, and relax. Drop my heel down, and relax. Now, as I drop my heel down and control that, where do I feel it? That's the key. Am I feeling it in the front of the ankle, or am I feeling it in the back? Okay? If you're feeling it in the back, it's probably more calf. If you're feeling it in the front, it's probably more talar-crural joint. Now, there's one more way we have to do that in a variation. Now we got to bend our knee to bias out the soleus. Remember I said earlier, there's two calf muscles. There's the gastroc, which is when your leg is straight, like I just did. Now we got to bend our knee and repeat that test. Where am I feeling it? Is it in the back or the front? For me, it's the back. So mine's more calf, soft tissue restrictions if I have any at all. So that's what you have to do to determine if it's calf or, meaning gastroc or soleus versus the front of the joint. Now, what happens if there's a mismatch? Meaning that your leg is straight, you come down and you feel it in the calf, and then you bend your knee and you feel it in the front of the joint. Well, that means you just need to work on both. It means that you have a mismatch and there's a little bit of set calf soft tissue restriction and a little bit of joint soft tissue restriction. So now let's dive into some of the exercises that you can actually perform to improve these specific restrictions. So let's say it's the front of the joint, your talar-crural joint, that's restricting you. There's two things we can do for that. So the first one is going to be a self-mobilization. You're going to take the web space of your hand, you're going to hit right there at that joint line, okay? And you're going to be doing the same test we did earlier, that half-kneeling dorsiflexion test, and rocking forward as you're pushing back into the joint, okay? So this is just your own way of doing a self-mobilization. It's very simple, very effective, but it's very easy to do too. Now, if you have a long band and you want to loop it backwards, you can do that as well, okay? The way you do that is you take this band, you loop it through at that same joint, you pull back. Now you can either put your knees on to make it easier, and you just rock forward, back and forth. Again, don't let that arch collapse, go straight over. Okay? Now if you want to work different parts of the joint, that's different. Then you can work into different corners of the joint when you're getting a little bit more advanced with it. But in the beginning, just work through it. Okay? These are ways you can self-mobilize yourself. Okay? Easy, very effective, 10, 15 repetitions at a time. You're not supposed to be working into tons of pain. You're just working on mobility with this one. Now the next one we're going to do with ankle dorsiflexion restrictions in the joint is going to be an internal rotation dorsiflexion test. So what happens a lot of times is the last part of that dorsiflexion is this tibia has to rotate in. The tibia is your shin bone. It has to be able to rotate in a little bit. You won't see it, it's very subtle, but it's just biomechanics. So I'm going to take my calf, I'm going to grip it, and I'm going to pull in, and then I'm going to hold that as I come forward, back and forth. So I'm gripping the calf, pulling the soft tissue to the side, pulling my shin in, and just going straight over the joint. From a side view, gripping, pulling, coming through. So that is a tibial internal rotation dorsiflexion mobilization. So those are the two mobilizations we want to work on if it's joint. Now if it's calf or soft tissue, here's what you can do. At first, I like using a foam roller just to get tone out of the muscle, okay? I'm not against stretching. I'm not also, for just foam rolling, but it is an effective way to start working on soft tissue, and you can make it active still. So I'm gonna keep my leg straight first to work on gastroc. So if that test before when your leg was straight was more gastroc, this is for you. Cross your leg, get a little pressure into that calf, and just rock your ankle and your foot back and forth into dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. That way you get active mobility of that calf and that gastroc. The way you make sure you get gastroc is you're higher up on the calf, okay? Because there's two gastroc heads, inside and outside, medial and lateral. Soleus is a little bit lower. We'll get to that in a minute. Now, if you want to hit a certain head a little bit more, what you do is you turn your foot in and then you rock back and forth, or you turn your foot out and then you rock back and forth, okay? It doesn't matter, you're still getting the calf and the gastroc, but you can try to bias it out a little bit more. Now, if you want to get soleus, you're just going to have to move a little bit lower down. Again, this is not foolproof. There's no way to say you're specifically just targeting one muscle over the other, but it's a way you can start to try to target it a little bit more. Again, back and forth, working through just ankle pumps, okay? So very effective soft tissue release, a way to start working active plantar flexion, dorsiflexion while you're working on that soft tissue health. Again, retest afterwards or retest 1 or 2 weeks afterwards just to make sure you're making improvements. So this is basically what you need to be doing for your ankle stiffness to individualize it for yourself. If you have family or friends that have ankle stiffness, or you're having friends or family that are interested in learning more about how to actually mobilize their own ankles, please send this to them. If you have questions, comment below or send me a direct message on my Instagram at BrianSchwabTPT on Instagram. Thanks for watching.